Have you ever wondered what would happen if you actually found a real genie? Not the Disney version with the catchy songs and the happy endings, but something far more sinister. Something that would make you question every wish you've ever made in your life. My name is Sarah, and 3 months ago I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. I was 24, working a dead-end job at a call center, living paycheck to paycheck in a studio apartment that barely fit my bed. Every night I'd stare at the ceiling and dream about all the things I wished I could change. More money, a better life, maybe someone who actually cared about me. Simple stuff, right? The kind of wishes everyone makes when they're lying awake at 3 in the morning, wondering how their life got so small. But here's the thing about wishes. They have a way of coming true in the most twisted ways possible. And when they do, you realize that getting what you want might be the worst thing that could ever happen to you. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always the worst day of the week at work. People were angry about their Monday bills, frustrated that the weekend was still 4 days away, and they took it out on whoever answered their customer service calls. That day had been particularly brutal. I'd been screamed at by 7 different people, called names I won't repeat, and by the time my shift ended at 6, I felt like I'd been run over by a truck. I decided to take a different route home that night. Instead of my usual path through the main streets, I cut through the old antique district. Most of the shops were closed, their dusty windows reflecting the orange glow of the streetlights. There was something peaceful about walking through those narrow alleys, surrounded by all that forgotten history. That's when I saw the shop. It wasn't there the week before, I'm sure of it. The building had been empty for months, with a faded "For Lease" sign hanging in the window. But now there was a small storefront with a hand-painted sign that read, "Curious Collections" in elegant gold lettering. The window display was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Ancient-looking artifacts were arranged on dark velvet cloth. There were ornate jewelry boxes, tarnished silver mirrors, and what looked like genuine medieval weapons. But what caught my attention was a small brass lamp sitting in the center of everything. It wasn't the Aladdin-style lamp you'd expect. This one was different. It had intricate engravings covering every inch of its surface. And even through the glass, I could see that the metal had an unusual patina that seemed to shift colors in the lamplight. I found myself pressing my face against the window, trying to get a better look. The engravings weren't random decorations. They told a story. I could make out tiny figures carved into the brass, some dancing, others fleeing in terror. The more I stared, the more details I noticed. There were symbols I didn't recognize, flowing script in what might have been Arabic or Hebrew, and right at the base of the lamp something that made my blood run cold. Carved in tiny letters, so small I almost missed them, were the words, "3 wishes granted. Choose wisely." Before I could talk myself out of it, I pushed open the shop door. A small bell chimed overhead, and the scent of sandalwood and something else I couldn't identify filled the air. The shop was bigger inside than it appeared from the street, with narrow aisles winding between tall shelves packed with the strangest collection of items I'd ever seen. "Can I help you find something specific?" the voice came from behind me, and I spun around to see an elderly man emerging from the shadows. He was thin and tall, with silver hair, and the kind of knowing smile that made me instantly uncomfortable. His eyes were pale blue, almost colorless, and when he looked at me, I felt like he could see straight through to my soul. "I was just looking," I managed to say, suddenly feeling foolish for being there. The lamp in the window caught my eye. His smile widened. "Ah, yes, the lamp. He's been waiting for the right person for quite some time. Tell me, What is it that you truly desire? The question hit me harder than I expected. What did I desire? Everything, it seemed like. A better job, enough money to stop worrying about rent, someone to love me, a life that meant something. The list felt endless and pathetic at the same time. I don't know, I said honestly. I guess I just wish things were different. He nodded as if my answer was exactly what he'd been expecting. Different how? More money? Love? Power? Fame? The lamp has granted all of these things before, though I must warn you, it comes with a price. I laughed, but it came out hollow. Right. A magic lamp. How much are you asking for it? For you? Nothing. Consider it a gift. He walked over to the window display and carefully lifted the lamp from its place on the velvet. But I do hope you'll remember our conversation when the time comes. He wrapped the lamp in a piece of dark cloth and handed it to me. The brass felt warm through the fabric, almost alive somehow. Just remember, be very specific about what you ask for. The djinn inside has a sense of humor, but it's not the kind that makes you laugh. I should have put the lamp back and walked out of that shop. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was wrong, that nothing good could come from taking something that was supposedly magic. But I was tired. Tired of my life. Tired of struggling. Tired of feeling like I was invisible to the world. So I took the lamp and walked out into the night. The old man called after me as I reached the door. Remember, Sarah, 3 wishes. Choose very carefully. I froze. I hadn't told him my name. When I turned back to ask how he knew, the shop was dark. The curious collection sign was gone, and the faded "for lease" notice was back in the window. It was like the shop had never existed at all. I stood there on the empty street, holding the wrapped lamp, wondering if I was losing my mind. But the brass was real enough, warm and solid in my hands, and when I unwrapped it back in my apartment, the engravings were exactly as detailed as I remembered. The tiny figures seemed to move in the lamplight, their carved faces twisted in expressions of joy and terror. That night, I set the lamp on my kitchen table and stared at it for hours. Part of me wanted to rub it, to see what would happen, but a bigger part of me was terrified of what might emerge. I'd read enough stories to know that genies, or jinn, as the old man had called them, weren't benevolent wish-granters. They were creatures of smoke and fire, bound to serve but not bound to care about the consequences of what they granted. I went to bed with the lamp still sitting on the table, untouched, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those carved figures dancing and fleeing. I heard whispers that might have been the wind but sounded like voices calling my name, and underneath it all was a low humming sound, like electricity running through the walls. By 3 a.m, I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and picked up the lamp. It was even warmer now, almost hot to the touch. The engraving seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. "This is ridiculous," I said out loud. "It's just a lamp." But even as I said it, I found myself rubbing the side of the brass with my thumb. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. The lamp grew burning hot in my hands, so hot I should have dropped it, but somehow I couldn't let go. Smoke began pouring from the spout, thick black smoke that didn't behave like smoke should. Instead of rising and dissipating, it swirled in tight spirals, growing denser and taking shape right there in my tiny kitchen. The temperature in the room plummeted. My breath came out in visible puffs as the smoke continued to pour out, far more than should have been possible from such a small opening. The smell hit me next. Sulfur and burning metal mixed with something sweet and cloying, like flowers left too long in a vase. Then the smoke began to solidify. What emerged wasn't the blue-skinned, jovial character from the movies. This thing was tall and lean, with skin that looked like it had been carved from obsidian. Its eyes were pits of fire, literally burning with orange flames that cast dancing shadows across my apartment walls. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding stone mixed with the whisper of wind through dead leaves. "Finally," it said, stretching arms that were too long and ended in fingers that came to sharp points. "Do you have any idea how cramped it gets in there? Centuries of being folded into that tiny space, waiting for someone desperate enough to make a deal." I tried to speak, but no words came out. The lamp clattered to the floor as my hands went numb with fear. The djinn noticed my terror and laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, don't look so frightened, little mortal. I'm here to grant your deepest desires. Isn't that what you wanted? 3 wishes, as is the ancient contract. Though I do hope you'll be more creative than the last few humans I've dealt with. Do you know how boring it gets when everyone wishes for money, love, and immortality?" I finally found my voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "You're real, very real, and very bound to serve you, for now." The djinn moved around my kitchen like it owned the place, its fiery eyes taking in every detail. "Such a small life you've built for yourself. This apartment, this job, this existence of quiet desperation. I can smell the loneliness on you, the way it clings to everything you touch." Heat rushed to my face. Even a supernatural entity was judging my life. "But that's why I'm here," it continued, turning those burning eyes back to me. "To change all of that, to give you everything you've ever dreamed of having. All you have to do is ask." I backed away until I hit the wall. "What's the catch?" There's always a catch with these stories. The djinn grinned, revealing teeth like black diamonds. "Smart girl. Yes, there are rules. 3 wishes, no more, no less. I cannot kill anyone directly, though I can certainly arrange circumstances that lead to death. I cannot make someone love you, though I can make them obsess over you to the point of madness. And I cannot grant more wishes, though there are ways around that particular limitation if you're clever enough." It moved closer, and the air around me grew thick and hard to breathe. "But here's what the stories don't tell you. Every wish you make creates ripples. Change one thing, and everything else shifts to accommodate that change. The bigger the wish, the bigger the ripples. And sometimes those ripples become tsunamis that destroy everything in their path." I thought about the carved figures on the lamp, the ones that looked like they were fleeing in terror. What happened to the people who had the lamp before me? The djinn's grin widened. Oh, they got exactly what they asked for. Every single one of them. The businessman who wished for wealth found himself the sole survivor of a plane crash that killed his entire family, inheriting millions in life insurance. The lonely woman who wished for love discovered that her perfect man was willing to kill anyone who looked at her wrong. The dying man who wished for health watched as his disease transferred to his young daughter. My stomach dropped. "You're saying every wish backfires?" "And not backfires, fulfills. I grant exactly what is asked for. Nothing more, nothing less. If the results aren't what you expected, that's a failure of imagination on your part, not mine." The djinn circled me like a predator studying prey. "But you seem intelligent, thoughtful. Perhaps you'll be different. Perhaps you'll think before you speak." I slumped against the wall, my mind racing. This was insane. I was having a conversation with a creature that shouldn't exist in my kitchen at 3 in the morning about wishes that could destroy my life. But the djinn was right about one thing. My life was small and desperate and lonely. What did I really have to lose? How long do I have to decide? I asked. Take all the time you need. Days, weeks, months. I'm patient. I've waited centuries for freedom. I can wait a bit longer for you to make up your mind. But remember, every moment you delay is a moment you continue living this half-life of yours. Every day you go to that soul-crushing job. Every night you come home to this empty apartment. Every time you look in the mirror and wonder what's wrong with you that no one seems to care, whether you exist or not. Each word hit like a physical blow because they were all true. The djinn wasn't lying or manipulating me. It was simply stating facts about my pathetic existence. I can change all of that, it continued, its voice becoming almost hypnotic. I can give you wealth beyond measure, love that consumes and transforms, power that makes the world bend to your will. All you have to do is ask, and be very, very specific about how you ask. The lamp on the floor began to glow softly, as if responding to the djinn's words. The carved figures seemed to move more frantically now, their tiny faces twisted in what I now understood was warning, not celebration. What happens to you when I make my third wish? I asked. The djinn's expression changed for just a moment, the confident smile faltering. I return to the lamp. I wait for the next person desperate enough to rub brass and hope for magic. Forever? Until the lamp is destroyed or I find a way to break free permanently. But that's not your concern, little mortal. Your concern should be deciding what you want most in this world and how to ask for it without destroying yourself in the process. I stared at the creature standing in my kitchen, this impossible being offering me everything I'd ever wanted. The smart thing would be to refuse, to somehow send it back and pretend this never happened. But as I looked around my cramped apartment, thought about my miserable job and my non-existent social life, I realized I was already trapped. The only question was whether I'd stay trapped in the life I had or risk everything for the chance at something better. The djinn watched me wrestle with the decision, those flame-filled eyes never blinking. I can see the wheels turning in your head. You're trying to find the safe wish, the one that improves your life without consequences. Let me save you some time. There isn't one. Every choice has a price. The only question is whether you're willing to pay it. It moved to the window and looked out at the city lights. Tell me, Sarah, what would you do for a life worth living? How far would you go to matter? To be seen? To be remembered? The way it said my name made my skin crawl, but I couldn't deny the truth in its questions. I was invisible in my own life, forgettable to everyone I met. I worked a job where my replacement could be trained in an afternoon, lived in an apartment no one ever visited, had relationships so shallow they barely counted as acquaintanceships. I need time to think, I said finally. The djinn nodded and began to dissolve back into smoke. Of course you do. I'll be in the lamp whenever you're ready. But remember, every day you wait is another day of the life you're already living. And that life is killing you slowly, one unremarkable day at a time. The smoke swirled back into the lamp with a sound like a sigh, and my apartment returned to normal temperature. But nothing felt normal anymore. I picked up the lamp from where I'd dropped it, surprised to find it was cool to the touch again. I spent the rest of the night researching jinn and genies online, looking for any information that might help me understand what I was dealing with. Most of what I found was folklore and fairy tales, but buried in academic papers about Middle Eastern mythology, I discovered references to bound jinn who were forced to grant wishes as punishment for ancient crimes. According to these sources, jinn were creatures of free will who despised being enslaved to human desire. They followed the letter of any agreement, but took pleasure in subverting the spirit of it. They were described as incredibly intelligent, patient, and utterly without mercy for those who tried to command them. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan, or at least the beginning of one. The next few days were torture. I went through the motions of my normal life, but everything felt different knowing the lamp was sitting on my kitchen table. I'd catch myself staring at it during breakfast, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. But the brass was real, the weight of it solid in my hands, and sometimes I swear I could hear faint whispers coming from inside. Work became even more unbearable. Every angry customer, every condescending supervisor, every mind-numbing hour felt like proof that I needed to make a wish. But every time I came home and looked at that lamp, I remembered the carved figures fleeing in terror. I remembered the jinn's words about ripples becoming tsunamis. I started making lists, pages and pages of potential wishes, each one more carefully worded than the last. I researched contract law, studied the exact phrasing of legal documents, tried to think of every possible loophole the jinn might exploit. But for every precaution I thought of, I could imagine 10 ways it could still go wrong. The loneliness was getting worse, too. Before the lamp, I'd accepted my isolation as just part of life. Now it felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. I'd see couples walking hand in hand and feel actual physical pain. I'd watch my coworkers chat about their weekend plans and realize no one had asked about mine because everyone knew I didn't have any. On Friday night, exactly 1 week after my encounter with the jinn, I broke down. I'd had the worst day yet at work, been written up for something that wasn't even my fault, and come home to an eviction notice slipped under my door. Apparently, my landlord was selling the building and all tenants had 30 days to vacate. I sat on my kitchen floor, surrounded by bills I couldn't pay, and holding an eviction notice for an apartment I hated, and I started to cry. Not just tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere I'd been keeping locked away for years. "This is pathetic," I said out loud, my voice echoing in the empty apartment. "I'm pathetic." That's when I heard it, a soft chuckling coming from the lamp. "Are you listening to me?" I demanded, grabbing the brass vessel and holding it up. "Is my misery entertaining to you?" The lamp grew warm in my hands and smoke began to seep from the spout. Not the dramatic eruption from before, just a thin wisp that formed into the jinn's face floating in the air above me. "Your misery is irrelevant to me, it said, its fiery eyes studying my tear-stained face. "But your desperation is delicious. It makes humans so much more pliable." "I hate you," I whispered. "Good. Hate is honest. Hate is pure. Much better than the false hope most of your kind cling to." The jinn's partial form circled around me like smoke from a campfire. "You've been researching, haven't you? Trying to find the perfect wish, the one that gives you everything without taking anything away." I wiped my nose on my sleeve. "Maybe." "And what have you concluded?" "That you're right. There's no safe wish. Everything has a price." The jinn's expression showed what might have been approval. "Very good. Most humans take much longer to reach that realization. Some never do. So what will it be, Sarah? Will you die slowly in this life of quiet desperation, or will you risk everything for the chance at something more?" I looked around my apartment one more time, at the water stain on the ceiling, The broken air conditioner I couldn't afford to fix, the stack of bills on the counter, at the life I'd built that wasn't really a life at all. "If I make a wish," I said slowly, "will you tell me honestly what the consequences will be?" The djinn laughed, that sound like breaking glass again. "I cannot see the future, little mortal. I can only grant what you ask for and watch as reality reshapes itself around your desire. But I will tell you this. Every wish I've ever granted has taught me something about human nature, and what I've learned is that you are all your own worst enemies." "What do you mean?" "You ask for love, but define it as possession. You ask for wealth, but have no understanding of its true cost. You ask for power, but lack the wisdom to wield it. The wishes don't destroy you, Sarah. You destroy yourselves by wanting the wrong things for the wrong reasons." I thought about that for a long moment. What if I wished for something small, something that couldn't possibly hurt anyone? Like what? I don't know. Enough money to pay my rent this month, a better job, something simple. The djinn's form solidified a bit more, becoming almost human-looking except for those burning eyes. And where would that money come from? Would you steal it from someone who needed it more? Would that better job belong to someone else who deserved it? You see, there is no such thing as a harmless wish, because nothing exists in isolation. Everything is connected to everything else. The weight of that realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Even the smallest change would ripple outward, affecting people I'd never meet in ways I couldn't predict. "So what's the point?" I asked. "Why offer wishes at all if they're all doomed to fail? Because humans need to learn that getting what you want and being happy are not the same thing. Because the universe has a sense of humor, and watching mortals destroy themselves with their own desires never gets old. And because..." The djinn paused, its expression becoming almost vulnerable. "Because I am bound to offer. I have no choice in the matter." For the first time, I felt something like sympathy for the creature. It was as trapped as I was, just in a different kind of prison. "How long have you been in the lamp high?" I asked. 3 months have passed since that night, and the lamp still sits on my kitchen table. I never made those wishes. Every morning I wake up in the same cramped apartment, go to the same soul-crushing job, and come home to the same empty life. But I've learned something the djinn never expected me to understand. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose to stay exactly where you are. Because the real prison isn't our circumstances. It's believing we need magic to escape them. The lamp offers everything, but costs your humanity. And that's a price I'm finally wise enough not to pay.